Hey guys, this is Julian of Julian Gray Media. If you follow my social media accounts, you'll probably know that I'm a huge deadmau5 / Mousetrap fan. Now, one of the huge styles that's blowing up in the Mousetrap universe and in a lot of other labels right now is that 100 BPM Rezz kind of sound. Rezz, Kid, a lot of guys are doing it. It's kind of a future-based electro hybrid. We're gonna be going over some of the fundamentals of that style today, and we're gonna be learning how to write music like that. So let's hop into the studio and get started. Awesome guys, so we have this project loaded up here. This is actually a little demo I've come up with to show you guys what kind of song we're gonna make here. It might come out, it might not, I don't know. Let's actually give it a play so you guys can get an idea of what we're dealing with here. Dope, so we are now in a new Ableton Live set. The first thing we're going to want to do is actually go up to the upper left here and set the tempo to 100 BPM. That is the Kid / Rezz go-to BPM. So if you notice, the Rezz beat is actually just a slowed down electro beat. It's a kick, and then a kick and a snare, and then a kick, and then a kick and a snare with hi-hats in between. To do that, let's actually load up the plugin Kick 2. I'm actually go into Sonic Academy Kick 2. If you don't have Kick 2, you can use any actual kick drum sample. I just like to use Kick 2 to synthesize my kicks because they come out really, really thick and nice. So we're actually going to shorten up this transient here. We're just going to use the default kick for now. We just want a pretty short transient. We don't want that boomy tail, which is what this is. Another reason I like Kick 2 is because we can actually visualize exactly what we're hearing. So I want to cut off some of that tail here and just get that clicky sound. That's the key. We're going to actually double click here and we're going to write in 4 notes. Actually load in 4 notes, 1 on each quarter note here. As you can see, if we load in quarter, these are 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we hit play, and then we have a 4 to the floor groove, which is the basis of the Rezz style. So we're actually going to cut this and put it into the session view here. Or I'm sorry, the arrangement view. I'm going to duplicate this a bunch of times with Control or Command D. Highlight it all, hit Control J or Command J, and now we have a large piece of that kick drum. We have this kick going. So now we have that 4 to the floor kick. I'm actually going to shorten it up to about 8 bars long, which is right there. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can visualize exactly what we're working on. I'm going to go ahead and name this kick. It's always a good idea to stay organized when you're working on music. Let's actually add in a new MIDI channel. You can also do Control Shift and T, I believe it is. Yes, T. And we're actually going to just highlight a region here. Do Control Shift M, Command Shift M on Mac. Now we have a MIDI clip here. We're actually going to go ahead and load in an Xfer Serum instance here. Now Rezz actually uses a lot of what we call bit crush on her synths. That's what gives it that growly kind of 8-bit sound. To create this sound, we're actually just going to do some basic modulation here, and we're going to add some basic effects. So we're going to start off with this sound here. So I'm actually going to pick a key to make this song in. Let's pick, I'm just going to use this key here. And that is what we're going to start with. Now the key to a Rezz bass line is to have a little bit of modulation. So what we're going to do is we're going to enable a filter here. And what we're going to do is actually move this filter as time goes on. So what we're going to do, bring down that resonance because we don't need it. That's what creates this sound. We don't want that, but we just want this basic motion here. Essentially what we're doing is designing a dead mouse pluck with an LFO. If you want to see my video on how to make a dead mouse pluck, you can click on the link in the upper right now and go to that video. But what we're going to do is drag an LFO on here. We're going to bring the cutoff down. So essentially what we're doing here is this LFO is going to control the movement of this knob here. Now, as you heard, this knob, once we enable the filter, is actually controlling the amount of frequencies that are being heard. So whenever it's at this stage, it's cutting all of this top data here. And when it's up and about, you can hear it is now not cutting that data. But what we want is actually something along these lines, where we have a pluck. And what we actually want is to bring this down, make it a little bit more plucky, and we want this to be an 8th note. So now we're getting that kind of more groovy Rezz sound. Let's actually take this down an octave. We can do this by dragging the octave down one. Now we have a more groovy bass line here. We can actually increase the unison, which essentially creates more versions of the same sound, and detune those a little bit. And now we have a little bit wider of a bass sound because we're detuning the amount of voices that we have, which is now 5. Then the key to the Rezz sound is actually an effect called bit crushing. So we're going to go to the effects tab here in Serum. We're going to do distortion. We're going to select down sample. And that's what a bit crush is. We're going to crank up this drive here until we're happy with it. I like it at about 42%. And then we're actually just going to hold that note. So we're going to go down here. We're going to double click on this MIDI clip, find where that note is that we're holding, and then just double click and draw it for the entire length of the clip. So now we have that note playing through the entire thing. Getting kind of close there. What we're actually going to do is go ahead and sidechain this to that kick drum. To do this, we're going to load in a compressor here in the audio effects tab. We're going to do a sidechain. We're going to hit this button here. You're going to hit sidechain, hit audio from kick. Now, if you don't know how to use a compressor properly, that is okay. If you guys want, you can check out my video on how to use a compressor, how to actually use a compressor, and a lot of people don't understand it completely. If you guys want to check out that video, you can click on the link in the upper right-hand corner right now and click on that video. So we're actually going to hit the kick drum here for the audio input. We're going to set the threshold down to 0. We're going to set the ratio pretty high. We're going to set the EQ on, so we're only listening for that click of the kick drum. And then we're going to hit play. And as you can hear, it's ducking. Now we don't want that much of a duck, so we're going to increase this EQ. And then we can bring up that peak gain here. So now we have a groovy bass line going here. What we can actually do is start to automate this, and that's what really creates the Rezz sound. So what we're going to do is actually assign one of these macros to that cutoff because we want to control this again. So the secret here is we want to open this up all the way on every end of bar. So let's give this a play. So that kind of gives you the idea of what we're going to do here. So now that we've mapped this macro to this cutoff and we've actually dragged it all the way up, we can actually name this cut because that's the cutoff filter here. If we move it, you can notice in Ableton here, the cutoff automation is actually moving as well. What we're going to do is actually going to draw in some lanes right here. In order to use this box tool, you can click on this pencil right here, and this is going to draw in whatever increment you have set down here. As you can see, I have it set to quarter notes because I want every quarter note to be at that level. But we can actually set it to a shorter value if we want, and then we can draw in those little amounts. But we don't want to do that just yet. So essentially what I did was I drew in a big quarter note at the end of every one of these bars. So let's give this a play. Now, what we can do is actually add some more effects to this sound to make it sound a little bit more beefy. I'm going to go ahead and add some multi-band compression. We can go back to the beginning here, and essentially I just encourage you to play with these settings until you're happy with it. Cool, so we need something else that will make this sound a little bit more interesting. So what I'm actually going to do is load it in a phaser. Maybe decrease the mix a little bit so it's not affecting the full signal. And turn this down so we're not clipping out of serum here. And then turn this down so we're not clipping into the actual channel. And then we can go ahead and name this the bass line. So that is the basis of the low end of a Rezz tune. So what we're going to do now is actually go ahead and load in a clap. Let's go into drum rack. We're going to double click on that in this drums window here on a new MIDI channel. We're going to go ahead and do this again. We're going to right click and then insert MIDI clip. Then we're going to find a drum we want to use. I actually like to use Leviathan. It's a pack by Black Octopus. Leviathan 2 just came out, but we're going to stick to Leviathan 1 for this video. If you guys want to see my review of Leviathan 2, you can click on the link in the upper right hand corner right now. So we're going to go ahead and into the snare folder here, and we're going to pick a snare that sounds like Rezz. I actually quite like that one. So what we're going to do is actually go ahead and draw in a snare on every other one of these kick drums. So as you can see, if you visualize right here, it's going to be that one, it's going to be this one, and then we can go ahead and copy that over. So now we have a... So we can short up that sample. What I just did was drag this over and then increase the fade out time so the snare is a little bit shorter. I didn't like all that ring at the end there. Then what we're going to do is add a little bit of reverb. So I'm going to go ahead and use Valhalla Room and turn down the mix a lot, and then I'm going to turn up the decay. Maybe decrease the high cut a little bit. And then we have a nice little clap there. So we have the basis of the Rezz track now. What we need to do is add a little bit more percussion and drums. And we're going to go to cymbals, or hi-hats rather, hit closed. And we want to use a little short transient sample here. That's a lot of the Mousetrap guys are doing these days. Short transients and panning. So there we go. That's a decent hi-hat. We're going to highlight everything, hit insert MIDI clip. What we're going to do is draw these on the offbeats. So we have that. And then we can actually go ahead and duplicate it again. Turn that down a little bit, name it hat. So we have a basic bass line going here. What we can actually do though is actually affect the speed of that LFO, and that's going to create a really cool effect here. So what we can do is actually move this knob here, and we can set it where we want it. We want it at 8th notes to start. But as you can see now, this is selected here, LFO 1 rate. If we go in and we actually start drawing different rates, we can actually start to get a more interesting effect here. So if I drag this up, let's see how that sounds. That's pretty cool. So what I'm actually going to do is actually hit this plus button here. This is a shortcut to copy automations. Now in this automation lane here, we can highlight this, hit Control C, and then we can actually hit Control D a bunch of times if we want, but we could also paste. So we have that now. Now to make this a little bit more interesting, let's actually go in and change these notes up. So I'm going to make this the length of one of those bars here, and then I'm actually going to add another note. So we have a E to start with here. Let's give this a listen. And then when that thing slows down, we'll actually draw in another note. And we can hit this headphone button here so we can hear what we're writing. And I'm actually going to go to a D. So let's duplicate that a bunch of times again and hear how that sounds. Cool, and that is sounding more like a track for sure. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is actually add some basic percussion. I'm going to go ahead and add an insert MIDI channel, and then we're going to add a drum rack. And what we're going to do is we're going to select some glitches and sounds like that we want to pan around. So what we're going to do is actually go in here. I'm actually going to use Leviathan 2. and there's a nice glitch folder in this pack now. I'm actually going to go to minimal clicks. Maybe like that and this. Cool, and then we'll actually highlight the region here, hit insert MIDI clip, and then we can actually start to draw in some randomized percussion. So we'll actually just try that. Fourth or quarter note is a little bit too short. We're going to do a 16th note. And it's all about just making that groove. And this one's a little bit delayed, so I'm actually going to drag this over. Make sure they're all on beat. And this one, let's zoom in and make sure that's on beat as well. And then we're actually going to duplicate these a bunch of times just for the sake of simplicity. If you have more time and you want to actually go ahead and make all of these loops a little bit different, you can do that as well. What we're going to do is actually add a compressor to this channel, and we're going to bring the threshold down a little bit so we have an equal level for all of these sounds. But what we're going to do is actually pan these, because that's what really creates the effect of, you know, interest in the mix. So we're going to select one of these. We're going to pan it hard right. Maybe this one will pan hard left, and this one will pan a little bit to the right. It might be a little bit too much. I'm going to pan it maybe 28% on both sides, maybe 30. Up just a bit. And that clap is a little bit loud. I'm going to turn that down. And then from this point, it's just a matter of layering different things on. Let's actually add maybe a pad or something like that to make it a little bit more interesting. Go into Serum again. Maybe we'll do like a high pad with a decent cutoff, high unison. And again, most of my sound design is based on the dead mouse pluck. So let's add a reverb. Maybe we'll do the seventh of that chord. So let's give this a play and add this note in. But everything you add, you're definitely going to want to sidechain. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that sidechain from the bass channel with Control-C onto this new channel here. And we're going to name this pad. Maybe not enough sidechain on this one. So what I'm actually going to do is decrease the attack time and decrease the frequency time. Actually, on that and the bass channel, it should be low attack time as well. But from this point on, it's all about just adding to that basis. This is the Rezz basis of tracks. Basically, the idea is to have that really gnarly electro-y bass that's modulated with a ton of bit crush on it. That's what really sells the Rezz effect. And that's what she's doing these days. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. If you didn't, give it a dislike and let me know why in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I make a video every Wednesday and Friday. This project will be available for free download in the description below if you want to play with it for yourself or if you want to have somewhere to start your own track on. I am Julian of Julian Gray Media. I make a video every Wednesday and Friday, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
You can hear that sound quite a bit different.